Weak honesty. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Satik Gumoyan. I'm the head of the legal department at the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission of the Republic of Armenia. And it is indeed a great pleasure for me to moderate this session today, which is dedicated to competition advocacy for small and medium-sized enterprises. We are going to explore how competition authorities can more effectively support the creation, growth, and meaningful participation of the SMEs in the markets. Particularly, we will try to focus on how competition advocacy and pro-competitive policies can help reduce regulatory and market barriers and enable SMEs to compete on equal terms and promote competitive markets that ultimately will benefit consumers. Effective competition advocacy for SMEs should consider the specific characteristics and needs of small businesses. As we know, SMEs often face challenges in understanding and applying competition principles, which makes clear guidance, practical tools, and targeted strategy particularly important. For instance, from the Armenian perspective, SMEs play a crucial role in the economy generally. The market study of our commission regarding SMEs financing has shown that SMEs account for around 53% of all business entities operating in the Armenia, and they contribute about 25% of budget revenues and provide approximately 25% of employment in the labor market. This demonstrates that SMEs play a significant role in GDP formation and the sustainable development of the economy. Therefore, enhancing the competitiveness of SMEs is particularly important. During our session, our respected speakers will share their experiences, insights on several key questions, including what are the main challenges SMEs face in understanding and complying with competition regulations, what advocacy strategies are the most effective ones, and finally, how can these advocacy initiatives be implemented in practice with defined timelines, and what indicators can be used to measure their effectiveness. Today's discussions will explore these questions and more. I would also like to note that the composition of our session is particularly interesting, bringing together perspectives from both competition authorities and private sectors, as we can see. So from different jurisdiction and institutional experience will help us to have a broader understanding of the issues. So unfortunately, due to current circumstances, we have fewer participants able to join us in person than we had initially hoped. Nevertheless, we are very grateful that our distinguished speakers could still participate and contribute to today's discussion. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speakers. I would like to begin with Mrs. Marjorie Holmes, partner at Reed Smith in the UK. Mrs. Holmes is a highly regarded competition lawyer with extensive experience representing companies in major investigations before the European Commission and UK competition authorities, as well as in complex merger control and competition litigation cases. It's an honor to have you, Mrs. Holmes.
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
We are also joined Mrs. Ines Seguera Mendes, Managing Partner at Abreu Advogados, if I pronounce it correctly. She's a highly experienced competition lawyer who advises on complex mergers, restrictive practices, sectoral regulation, and corporate reorganizations across multiple sectors. Mrs. Mendes has also led major projects in Portugal and currently serves as president of the National Committee of the International Advocates Union. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Joining us online, we have Mr. Pedro Hinojo Gonzalez. You have heard him from the previous panel as well. He is head of market studies at the Spanish Competition Authority. Since 2014, he has built a distinguished career within the authority and previously held key positions in the Spanish Ministries of Economy and Industry, bringing extensive expertise in competition policy, market studies, and regulatory analysis. It's nice to have you here, Mr. Hinojo. Finally, also joining us online is Mr. René Miliš, case handler in the cartels unit at the Office for the Protection of Commission of the Czech Republic. Mr. Miliš works directly on cartel enforcement cases, bringing valuable practical experience in competition investigations and enforcements. It's nice to have you, Mr. Miliš, as well. So
hello, thank you for having me.
Let's start our discussion section now. Let me turn to our first speaker, Mrs. Holmes. Mrs. Holmes, from the UK perspective, what are the main challenges that SMEs face, and what has the CMA's research and practical experience revealed about these challenges? The floor is yours.
Thank you. I have some slides. Just some background slides.
May I have?
Yeah. Perhaps you do them.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. So thank you. I thought I'd just start by saying what is a small or medium-sized business from the UK perspective. And we define small as people with less than 50 employees, and medium, companies with less than 250 employees. And we also have a limit in terms of turnover of 10 million for small, 44 million for medium, and then the balance sheet can be 70 million for medium-sized businesses. So just to put it in context, that is small and medium-sized in the UK. Next slide, please. As David mentioned this morning, in the UK we're very keen on surveys, and he mentioned that there's been 4 surveys in the UK. I was specifically asked to give you some detail behind some of those surveys. So in 2001, the results of the survey carried out by the CMA found that only 24% of small and medium-sized businesses understood competition law. So more than 75% didn't understand competition law. Only 18% of small businesses had heard of the CMA. They didn't know who the CMA was. I think if we did a survey now, that would have gone up much higher, because the CMA is on the TV regularly now. That must be a policy decision by the CMA and Sarah Caldwell, who's bringing the profile up. 60% of small and medium-sized businesses didn't know that it wasn't okay to swap customer lists with their competitors. And 55% thought that price fixing was just a moral thing, it wasn't a legal thing. Less than 10% of small and medium-sized businesses had any training at all. That's compared to 41% for large businesses. And perhaps the most amazing percentage is the fact that only 6% of small and medium-sized businesses were aware they could get fined if they didn't comply with competition law. 6%. So perhaps not surprising we didn't have, it certainly needed to change things. Next slide, please. So what did the CMA decide to do about this? What they decided to do was to try and make simple explanations on competition law So they brought in a rule for themselves that they would try and summarise important aspects of competition law in 60 seconds. And the pictures that you see at the bottom, competing fairly in business, and cheating or competing, these are on the CMA website. They came up with this idea, cheating or competing, to try and get across that cheating is not fair, competing is the right thing. So what they tried to do is put simple explanations of competition law, and also to try and get across, which I think has come across in the other sections, that what they were trying to do is not just bash small and medium-sized business, but to help them to comply, but also to get on, to make sure other businesses also comply with competition law. Next slide, please. So I think this is an important part of what the CMA were doing, was they were showing that small and medium-sized businesses were being helped by the CMA, not just told to comply with competition law. So the CMA did an investigation of banks that were giving unsecured loans to small and medium-sized businesses. And they made the banks publish on their website the rates that they were charging the small and medium-sized businesses, so they made them transparent. They also made the banks put online tools that the small and medium-sized businesses said would help them. So there's an example of an investigation specifically designed to help small and medium-sized businesses. On the other side, we have a regulation in the UK. If you're a UK large company and you're doing business in the UK, a regulation was brought in to say that you must publish every year how long it takes you to pay your bills. And I've heard earlier one of the issues that has come up in many areas for small and medium-sized businesses, late payment. So as a practitioner, when I go out and do seminars for small and medium-sized businesses, I always mention this, because many small and medium-sized businesses are not aware that big companies should be paying and not leaving it too long. And the UK say that if you don't get paid on time, you should be claiming higher interest, and they mention figures like 8% interest, which gets the interest of small and medium-sized businesses. So those are two examples of ways that the CMA are trying to help small and medium-sized businesses, and they're telling them about this at the same time that they're telling them that they must comply. Next slide, please. So I think you've heard quite a lot already about who the target people are. The CMA do talk with trade associations, with government departments. They go out and do seminars regularly. Next slide, please. So top of the list is surveys. We like to do surveys. We've done 4 already since the CMA started. We like to do market studies. There are workshops specifically for small and medium-sized businesses where the CMA go out around the country and provide workshops. Quite often they do these in association with the universities in the various jurisdictions. So they don't just say, come to us in London, they actually go around the country, and they use the universities as the venue in many cases. There was a case to do with modelling agencies where the modelling agencies hadn't realised that they were not allowed to price fix. I know it sounds amazing. They got fined back in 2016, but the CMA, realising that not just the people who'd been unlucky enough to get caught, but the whole creative industry were just not aware, they actually put out an open letter to the industry saying, we know that you're doing things wrong. Look at this, you will get fined. So instead of carrying out more investigations, they gave them a warning and told them they'll be coming back in a few years. They also look at education and what to do about that. And we've had discussion about trying to ensure that even before you get to universities, that if you're doing economics at A-level, it should be part of the curriculum that they talk about competition law and the importance of competition law helping improve economies, helping GDP improve. So even at A-level, starting to educate people. We do in the UK give discounts on compliance. I know that every jurisdictions don't always do that, but we do give a discount, 10% discount for just having a compliance program in place. And the CMA do give discounts. You know, some jurisdictions say if you've breached competition law, your compliance plan is not working. UK approach is, look, you've tried. If you've got a compliance program in place, we will give you a discount. So it's discretionary, but in practice they do give it. And then the last two are just these two examples of late payment, trying to help small and medium-sized businesses get paid. And also, I've heard it quite a lot in Armenia about problems to do with supermarkets, many of whom have market power, but they're not dominant. And we have a groceries supply code of practice that the supermarkets are required to sign up to be fair to suppliers, to make sure they pay them regularly, to make sure that the supermarkets have training to know that they should be fair to suppliers. Next slide, please. So they're telling small and medium-sized businesses you must have compliance programs in place. The compliance program, the 4 points on the left-hand side of the slides for you, that's from the CMA website. What they're saying to small and medium-sized businesses, look, you don't need a complicated program. All you need to do is answer those 4 questions. That can be a page. Answer those 4 questions, identify the risk, evaluate the risk, manage it, and also monitor it. And if you do that, we regard that as a compliance program. We'll take that into account. And they provide quick guidance for small and medium-sized businesses on how to put together their compliance programs. And they're envisaging the small and medium-sized businesses doing it without external legal advice, which I think is really very practical. Next slide, please. So these I want to talk about. These are from my private practice experience, and I think that they're really good examples to illustrate that these small and medium-sized businesses, they're not aware of competition law. They're not pretending they're not aware. They really are not. And this case to do with the production market, broadcasting and production. We had a case in the UK where TV companies and content producers, the content producers for the TV, it can be produced by the big companies like ITV, BBC, Sky, but also we have a culture of small and medium-sized businesses who provide content for the TV. An investigation was started in the sports sector where one big company went for leniency because the big companies and the small companies had been sharing information on how much they paid to the freelancers. We're talking about the cameramen. We're talking about the people related to the production, the technical people. They went for leniency. The others got fined. There was a fine of 4.2 million. So not a massive fine, but there was a fine. Now, some of the small production companies saw in the press reference to this sports investigation. And they were not involved in sports, they were involved in drama. But they saw it. And in at least one occasion, one of these small production companies contacted their lawyer. Their lawyer was a finance lawyer because they didn't use competition lawyers, and said, we've seen this sports case, is it relevant to us? And they were told by their finance lawyer, you're a small and medium-sized business, different rules apply. So they carried on with the same activity and were deeply shocked when the CMA got to their turn. So this is an illustration that the small and medium-sized businesses really didn't understand. When the CMA arrived and did investigate in the drama sector, they took a very light touch approach. Instead of fining the small and medium-sized businesses, they gave them a warning to go and get their act sorted, and they didn't fine them. So that's a very pragmatic approach by the CMA. The other example I want to talk about is joint purchasing. Many companies, small and medium-sized businesses, don't know that you can't price fix, but they also don't know that it's perfectly acceptable for small and medium-sized businesses with certain rules to do joint purchasing. So I always give them this example. These are companies where they get together small off-licensing businesses and get them to jointly buy their products. And what that does is it allows them to compete with the supermarkets, even if they sign up to Cost Cutter, where they're a joint purchasing group. Their costs are still 12% higher than the supermarkets. But by joining together, they're allowed to purchase and get the economies of scale. So there's an example of something that small and medium-sized businesses can do, provided they put in place the right safeguards. Next slide, please. And then just acknowledging that other countries have the same kind of things in place. So next slide, please. So I want to finish by saying, complaints procedure. In the UK, we have a complaints procedure. It's free to complain. You can do it online, and you will get a reply from the CMA. So small and medium-sized businesses can help the CMA if the CMA look at trends, because they can make a complaint about other competitors or other companies. And so we have this complaints procedure in the UK, and it's very simple to make a complaint, and you will get a reply. If you put in a short complaint, you may get a short reply. And the CMA don't take up a lot of them, because for strategic reasons they're not able, and resources, they're not able to take up a lot. But if you can put forward a case to say that this has happened and you should take this up, and we're a small and medium-sized business, but small and medium-sized businesses do have a strategic value, you can get the CMA to take up the complaint for you and make sure that some of your competitors are complying with competition law. So these are just some examples of ways that the UK is trying to get buy-in from the small and medium-sized businesses. They're telling them that they must comply, and they're also telling them we can help, and we need to help in order to try and improve the economy. And finally, I want to say as well that the lack of awareness that applies to small and medium-sized business isn't just small and medium-sized business, it's the public at large. And we've had a case in the UK where there was a criminal cartel case where we have juries. There was clear price fixing in terms of what competition lawyers would regard as price fixing. But it went before a jury in the UK. One party pleaded guilty, the rest argued, look, our business was going to go bust if we didn't price fix. We were trying to keep jobs for other people. We didn't make money out of it personally ourselves. We didn't get a brown envelope. And the jury found them not guilty. So the public perception on competition law also is pretty low. And the result of that in the UK is that the UK authorities, rather than going for criminal convictions, are now going for disqualification of directors, where the disqualification is decided by a judge and not a jury. So that's just an example of, it's not just small and medium-sized business with low understanding, it's the public at large. And we need to explain to the public at large that we need to get competition compliance in place for the benefit of the economy as a whole to help improve our GDP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Holmes. I believe we should also draw an example from the UK practice and use service more frequently. And also, when you were talking about CMA's practice, I would like to note that in 2024 in Armenia we have this huge legislative amendments, extensive ones, regarding the supermarkets and suppliers relationship. And after the amendments, now we have clear requirements for those supermarkets who have market power, how they should work with suppliers, what requirements they should put on them, and for instance, they should now publicly make public their requirements. So we will have opportunity to assess that. And also, one thing that I was extremely impressed from your speech was the price fixing practice that you told, the case that you told, because the public perspective of competition law is hard to have the way that we as representatives from competition authorities have. And for instance, in our agency, I believe we also are struggling with this issue to explain competition rules in more simple terms and to have this clear perspective from public, what is generally competition law and why it is beneficial for SMEs as well. So thank you very much. It was very insightful. Now let's turn to Mrs. Mendes. So could you please, from the Portuguese perspective, share the experience with competition advocacy for SMEs and explain how advocacy and stakeholders' engagement will help raise awareness and make competition law more simpler for SMEs? Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks once again for the opportunity to be here. I'm sorry I don't have slides. I'll make it short, I think, then we can discuss a little bit further on. I won't repeat again everything about the SMEs, their importance, and the concerns, the lack of capabilities, internal capabilities, etc. We have all discussed that quite a lot, and so we have this basic understanding. Just to let you know, in Portugal, they represent 99.9% of the businesses, so it's practically everything. And most of them are not even small, they are micro. So it's hugely important that the competition authority can reach out to these companies, basically, because if we want to have a competitive market, we have to have these companies understanding the benefits of competition and complying, but also I think what we need most is to fill in the gap between the law and the practice, and to make these companies understand how important compliance of competition law is for them and for their business, and how they can grow out of this compliance. So the Portuguese Competition Authority has been taking a series of initiatives in this regard. They have quite a few market studies. They have also engaged in a lot of initiatives concerning awareness, and there was one in particular that has been going on for 2 years, which was launched at the 20th anniversary of the authority, 20 years, 20 cities, and this basically was the result of the competition authority understanding that they had to get out of Lisbon, which is where the headquarters is, and just go to, you know, the interior of the country and to speak directly to these companies, because they were really far away, have no clue of competition law, what this means for them. They just think, as Marjorie was also saying, that's nothing to do with me, that's for big companies, so what do we care about? So enough that we have to bear with the big companies when negotiating with us. So they did this, and they are now in its, I think only 2 cities are left. It started 2023, so we're now 26. It has been a very long, every month they have meetings, and most importantly, they have workshops. So it's not only to get to these places. Usually this is also made with the support of local business organizations, so to engage them as well, and the associations. And they don't get there and make a speech on the benefits of competition law. They do workshops, and they try to be and to relate to the business particulars of that region. And we just had last Friday, the 12th, a bit mixed, There was an interesting case. We had a decision of the competition authority concerning the association of private employment in HR companies, and they were fined by the competition authority. And why is this related? Because it's an enforcement case. It's related because the investigation started when they were speaking with these companies during this initiative, 20 years, 20 cities. So this is to say that these initiatives, the outreach, the fact that the competition authorities do go and meet the business themselves, it's also very important for the competition authorities to understand their public and understand some of the practices that they couldn't have a clue if they just stayed where they were and just had all the practice guides and tried to spread the word, but without having this direct contact. So this is the case where advocacy has also played a very important role in enforcement. So, which is, I think, a good example of this. But to say that this is our main concern with the SMEs is because they are indeed the backbone of our economy. And so it is absolutely crucial that we have these types of initiatives. I think, and don't want to take a long time with this, there is still a huge gap, notwithstanding these two very intensive years of these workshops with the authority. There's still a way to go through. There's still a lot of other things that have to go. I think one of the main things is the connection with the academia, and trying to have all these businessmen that have, when they study, to have some lights about, share some light about the importance of competition for the growth of their business. And more than having just an enforcement approach, to have the positive approach, the half full glass, because it's much from my practice. As you can imagine, I work a lot with these companies, so they are basically the clients who I work with. And the level of awareness is really, really low. And the contact that they have is mostly through the news, so big enforcement cases. And they tend to look at the competition law as something that is, well, they just want to get away from that. They have nothing to do with that, and they hope they won't have nothing to do with that, because they only speak about these huge fines. So it's breaking this and having this dialogue, not only with enforcement, which is important because at least they understand it goes on the news when they connect the TV at night, and they understand there is something called the competition regime. But more important than that is then to do the second phase, which is, okay, this is important to you too, and why, but this is important to you not because you'll be fined only, but because it will help you grow your business. And I think this is the work that has to be done. And we as lawyers have been doing this with our clients, trying to draft compliance programs that are adjusted to their realities, so you don't need hugely complex compliance programs that they don't even have the resources to implement them, but just to try to there's no one size fits all. It's really, you have to tailor-made for these companies what can be of interest for them, so that you can bring them to the good side of the competition law. So, sorry, took already the time. We can then discuss, but pass to them.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mendes. The gap that you mentioned between competition authorities, SMEs, and generally public is really an issue for us as well. And one thing that we are trying to do to narrow this distance is one tool that Mrs. Holmes already mentioned. We also have this tool to give discount for the companies if they have adopted a compliance program. And also we use workshops as well. We're trying to have communication with not only academic sectors, but also lawyers and legal community, because we believe one bridge that can help us is lawyers, legal community, professionals who are working with SMEs, inside SMEs, and I believe we still have to do more to narrow this distance, but the tools that you have mentioned can be very helpful, and I was impressed with the huge number of SMEs in Portugal. I didn't have a clue. It was really impressive, so thank you very much. Now let's fly to Spain, and let's turn to our next speaker, Mr. Pedro Gonzalez, who is joining us online from the Spanish Competition Authority. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Sorry for not being there. I'm going to try to share my presentation. Yes, I think that I can do it now. I hope that you can see it in a few seconds.
We can see your presentation.
Thank you.
Great.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm going to talk fully on about a recent market study we carried out related to SMEs. Here you have the links and the resources. The study is translated into English. So the purpose of this study is examining the specific topic of the barriers to SMEs in the creation, the growth, and participation in public procurement. So I think this is no surprise to anyone that SMEs are the most of the firms. Actually, it's almost 100%, so 99.8% of the more than 3 million firms that exist in Spain. They are 65% of private employment and 55% of private GDP. When we examine, especially we compare to other European countries, and we see that in Spain we have lower rates of business creation and survival. The size of our firms tend to be lower and the productivity lower than for the European peers. And we see that SMEs lack some expertise in innovation, digitization, and internationalization, and some present in this phenomena that are key to this productivity. And when we examine specifically the data for public procurement, we see that the rate of participation, the rate of award in public procurement is lower for SMEs than in European countries, but especially where we see the biggest difference is in participation. So many firms do not take the initiative of participating in public procurement. So we saw this as a big gap. In terms of the analysis of the market study, we saw that in Spain, and this is also a reality in many other countries, that we have regions, we have local governments, and we see that there is a lack of market unity. This complexity and regulatory fragmentation at different levels of government is especially harmful for SMEs when this regulation is not consistent. And especially the issue of interoperability between administrations. In terms of business creation, we see that there is a bureaucratic burden, especially when we take into account that Spain has made some improvements instead of electronic creation of firms, but still some procedures are out of this system, especially local licenses. And even if these tools exist of the electronic creation as an assistant tools, many SMEs don't know them. So they use less straightforward channels for business creation. There are still licenses. This is common. Licenses to start some activities, not all of them, but some activities that you need a license. And that in terms of creation, in terms of growth, we saw that some types of regulation may be unfriendly for SMEs. When you have horizontal obligations that apply to all firms, this is relatively obviously more costly for SMEs. This is obvious. They have less resources, but at the same time, some firms actually have different thresholds for SMEs and for being a corporation. But this risk having a what is called a threshold effect or a step effect. When you reach the level, a higher level of the one of an SME, or we reach some threshold, some legal, accounting, tax, labor obligation, they increase abruptly. So this is a disincentive or a cost of growth. The state aid regimes sometimes they have the risk of non-take up. So many state aid regimes are targeting SMEs, but sometimes they are too complex, and some SMEs don't participate in these public aid schemes. And sometimes they are not awarded using competitive means. That means being tender, and they use this first in, first out order of arrival, which is not pro-competitive and which may not be helpful as well for firms that need more time to prepare their project. And again, I think we have talked about this extensively this morning. The issue of late payments affect SMEs asymmetrically and more than big corporations. In terms of public procurement, there is also fragmented and extensive regulation. There is not sometimes sufficient information for SMEs to know where the opportunities are in public procurement markets. There is not sufficient planning and publicity and transparency of the public procurement calendar. And we saw barriers to be awarded contracts because there are sometimes unnecessary or disproportionate criteria that exclude that could exclude SMEs from participating. Also, there are questions when submitting bids, maybe formal procedures and the risk of not complying with some formal requisites, the tight deadlines that sometimes SMEs face, and also risks to executing contracts. So brings risks along the whole cycle of the public procurement. Sometimes administrations pay with delays. There is financial contract, you need to investments, but then you're going to be paid afterwards. So we saw these risks in public procurement. With that in mind, we included some recommendations in these three areas. In the area of creation, we propose promoting and integrated and for competitive market, reducing this fragmentation and promoting simplification and coordination among the levels of governments. So one type of issues, for instance, retail activities are sometimes regulated locally. But if there was like a local ordinance that at least some patterns across the whole municipalities, in Spain we have more than 8,000 municipalities, that would be helpful for SMEs to have a more consistent framework. In terms of business creation, instead of licenses, we prefer a system of self-declaration, so initiate the activity without a license and then being supervised ex post. In case where licenses are needed because they are justified, we propose to streamline licensing procedures, and the one-stop-shop business creation, which already exists, we want to strengthen it through more communication, especially regarding in terms of business creation, integrating local procedures in the electronic business creation, and also strengthening assistant tool, more communication, more training, more mentoring type initiatives for SMEs which have this asymmetry of information to start their activity, and also consider regulatory sandboxes for innovative activities. In terms of growth, we want regulation to be pro-growth, so adjust the regulatory burden for SMEs. Sometimes you can reduce the requisites for SMEs because non-compliance by SMEs has not the same systemic costs. But at the same time, avoid threshold effects. So when obligations grow, when you or are increased, when the firms grow, we want gradual transitions to stronger obligations. The once-only principle in terms of submitting documentation, sometimes because of this regulatory fragmentation in Spain and the many different levels of governments, firms have to comply with requisites and provide documentation that it's already in the hands of public administration, but in the hands of other public administration. So by ensuring full interoperability between administration, this would reduce burdens for SMEs. And also in terms of state aid, again, pro-competitive state aid and more training, information, and mentoring type initiatives for SMEs to remove these information asymmetries that sometimes make them not participate in state aid, and also combating late payments with stricter sanctions and monitoring. In terms of facilitating SMEs participation in public procurement, um, we want a competitive public procurement framework which is more accessible to SMEs, improve planning and accessibility of the information on tenders and on the general system. Also with training and support initiatives for SMEs so that this overcome this information asymmetry that makes them not participate. For competing tenders with division into lots, and only mandating requisites or when it is needed and justified because of the content of the services tendered. Objective criteria to access the procedure and objective formula for the award of the tendering. Also facilitate submission of bids in terms of formal requisites, more ample deadlines and more accessible procedures to SMEs needs. Reduce the burdens during contract execution to avoid these financial risk and delays that can affect the SMEs asymmetrically. And public procurement entities, we think that they need more training, more association, more awareness of this capability that public procurement has to promote competition and specifically SMEs participation. So I leave it here. I leave there of course my email for any further questions after the workshop. But now I'm also happy to participate in the debate and address any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hinojo. Of course, we as an agency share some similar struggles regarding providing equal terms for SMEs to participate in public procurements. And we are checking public procurements requirements very attentively recently because we also have some signals regarding the equal terms. And also one thing that I believe we also have, one issue that we also have is that bureaucratic requirements for SMEs is sometimes too higher according to them to participate more easily in tenders and public procurements. And also I believe that regulatory sandbox that you mentioned as a way to solve these issues can be useful for SMEs. And one thing you also mentioned about the late payments, I believe we briefly touched this topic in a previous panel, but in 2024 it has become a great issue for Armenia and for SMEs. So we initiated legislative amendments, and now new regulation requires buyers of agricultural products to pay suppliers within 30 calendar days, for instance. So the in agricultural sector, SMEs have this opportunity to require payment in 30 days. Otherwise, it may be considered as a violation of bargaining power, and competition authority has right to initiate proceedings and fine the one who is not complying with the rules. So thank you very much. Now let us turn to Mr. Rene Milic, who is joining us online from the Office for the Protection of Competition of the Czech Republic. Mr. Milic, given that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to competition advocacy for SMEs, could you share the Czech experience, particularly regarding advocacy related to labor market agreements, and how these efforts help support SMEs and fair competition? The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I will start from more broader way. I would like to state, as everyone stated already before me, that SMEs are an important part of the economy. While the large companies mostly have big in-house law teams, and they work closely with international law firms that are focused on competition law. Small and medium enterprises are met with few key challenges. The first one is the limited awareness of competition law. From our experience, they have knowledge about practices such as bid rigging. That's why in these cases we are not very lenient to small and medium enterprises. But price fixing or market allocation can also be in a different type of conduct than they would expect. For example, in areas as labor markets, sports, agriculture, etc. Another problem for us, or I would say we found the problem, is the complexity of legal rules. They are mostly broad. Even for some lawyers that are not specialized in competition law, it's hard for them to understand what are illegal practices. Even more than it's hard to understand for non-lawyers, especially small medium enterprises. This means it's important to communicate in clear language that is understandable to every human. As it was mentioned, even a jury can have another opinion on competition law, and most importantly, provide practical examples from our experience. And last key uh, last key challenge, I would say, would be limited resources for compliance. Even though they might want to uh, get their internal processes more in compliance with competition law, it can be also a question of the money. They don't, because the competition lawyers, especially in our country, are quite expensive. So it's maybe also the reason why the competition compliance is not so big for small and medium enterprises. With small and medium enterprises, there is also a link with the target audience, which is a little bit different than with the big companies. You have to focus on the owners, managers, or employees that are responsible for sales, HR, depending on the target competition advocacy. Then also you can influence the small and medium enterprises through the key influencers. We mostly focus on industry and trade associations. They have mostly good relationships. They listen to them, and it's a good communication channel for such businesses. Also, universities, workshops, training platforms, all these play a role when influencing such businesses. When it comes to advocacy strategy, we distinguish between general advocacy and targeted advocacy for specific sectors or markets. When it comes to the general, I think Czech Competition Authority use ways like any other competition authority. We create brieflets, information papers, guidance papers. We try to promote compliance programs. In comparison to some countries, we also give fine reduction, even if there was not compliance program, but they come up with one during the administrative proceedings. So there is even incentive to make a compliance program once you already committed the infringement. We organize seminars, conferences, we are active on social media, we start even using AI for creating videos, etc. And these all help raise the awareness in general. But when it comes to specific sectors or markets, you need to a little bit work with the approach, and based on the area you want to focus on. For example, labor markets, we we start to focus on HR departments or people responsible in such businesses for hiring. We created
Wow.
information paper. During the creation, we already found out that some of the small and medium enterprises committed such infringements, but because even for us it was quite new area, we decided to be lenient and do what should the competition authorities do, and that's the make the fair market and everything compliant with the competition law. So instead of relying on fining and insisting that you should be punished for such action, we decided that it wouldn't be fair, especially to the small and medium enterprises. So we published the paper. We informed public about that we concluded some investigations without issuing fines, and that in the future we probably wouldn't be so lenient, but it's a new area. And then we organized the seminars for HR departments or and other employees of the small and medium enterprises. We received a lot of questions, so we prepared a leaflet with answer to them. We then again send them to the target audience, and then we received relevant complaints, also anonymous questions asking how they could improve their compliance with such area. And I think this is one of the indicators of success when you start receiving relevant complaints and relevant questions, even when it's such new area and before nobody knew or mostly didn't know that such practice could be illegal with competition law. At the same time, a low number of additional questions that seem out of hand could be indicators of success. If someone still doesn't understand what wage fixing or no poaching, for example, is, then probably we have done a bad job explaining what such practice means. And also, increased number of companies with compliance programs are for us indicator that competition advocacy in general works. That would be everything from me, and I think there is no one size fits all, and especially when you target specific sector or specific area of competition, you need to take a specific approach. Of course, in general, we try to do a competition advocacy too, but we are of the opinion that the broad public already know about the basic competition infringements, as I mentioned, for example, bid rigging, which are every month or year in the public media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Milic. I also agree with the idea that we should find right people and right communities to have this targeted advocacy and effective advocacy strategy. I also believe that complexity of regulations can be a problem, and that we should not only rely on enforcement and fines to have this compliance with competition regulation, although in my subjective opinions, enforcement still is the best tool to have this compliance with competition law. And now, as I would like to invite each of our panelists to share a key takeaway or an idea that you believe is particularly important for fostering a pro-competition policy making for SMEs. We will start with Mrs. Holmes, keeping the traditions.
Listening to the presentations today and yesterday does seem like there's a theme that it's important to get across to SMEs how important it is for the economy that competition works properly. And it's important that they're shown that we're trying to help as well as enforce.
Not wanting to be repetitive, but I think the most important that resulted from all these discussions is that advocacy should not be or should be regarded as a very rewarding instrument and investment. And why? Because this is the means that is most helpful to really spread out the message of the competition and how important it is. So it allows the business community to understand its benefits. It also allows, as we saw in the example of the Portuguese company, enforcement and to identify practices that would be otherwise invisible. And it will certainly help to reduce anti-competitive behaviors. And the final note is that advocacy should not be the exclusive right, or must I say duty, of the competition authorities. There are quite a few stakeholders that are important also in this work, and I think it will be much easier if we can do this together, and I'm including lawyers as well. I think we are part of that. And speaking of lawyers, just very briefly, if we look, for instance, in Portugal, and it won't be different in other jurisdictions, even Mrs. Holmes with the example of the UK and the finance lawyers, there is still a huge gap in understanding competition awareness. Not all lawyers have to be specialized, thanks God, but there should be also a concern of having more awareness, because most of these small companies do have their own lawyers, and it is important to reach out to them. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Hinoju, the floor is yours.
So thanks so much. I think that we share the consensus of the limitations in terms of resources and the asymmetry in terms of resources that the SMEs have. I think that this has been the most common message of this panel. And with that in mind, I think that we have to give a strong priority to SMEs in our advocacy efforts. That would be my main takeaway.
Thank you. And Mr. Milic?
I would like to say, if the main goal is to have fair competition, competition advocacy is very important, because we can always find ways how to find companies such as small, medium enterprises. We had uh, many cases where we decided to be more lenient because for us it was seen unfair. So we try to more approach this leniently and spread the word to so such practices doesn't happen more often.
Thank you very much. And as we have little time now for the audience, if anyone has a brief comment or question, you can ask or hold your peace. Okay. Microphone.
Hello. A question to Ms. Holmes and Ines. Do you think it's easier to explain to the SMEs about the importance of compliance program to prevent cartels or coordinated practices or unilateral conducts? And also another question, do you have the numbers of if it's more common to have unilateral conducts or cartels accusations in your countries?
I don't have the numbers, but my guess would be cartels are more common than unilateral. That would be my guess.
Also, I don't have. I will check and send it to you if I find them. But I would say cartels would probably be more visible, at least, than unilateral conduct. The other question was, what is more effective in the approach to the SMEs? I think what would be more effective is to explain them unilateral conduct probably, because they are usually having to negotiate with companies with a much stronger market power. So that would be a way of entering and making them understand what they can benefit from knowing how to react to this.
Can I just add as well that I think somebody else mentioned earlier on in the conference that dominance and dominance position, abuse of dominance is pretty difficult in some cases. You do have situations like with the supermarkets where all of them have power, but they don't have a dominant position. They might have 30% market share and they are competing, but it's what to do about those situations where they're not in a dominant position, but they do have market power. I think those are one of the issues that does trouble the competition authorities.
And for me, another very important thing in this SMEs is they are very informal as in their businesses. So the awareness of the dangers of this informality, and as well as what they speak within the associations, that many of them think, well, these are the ones that are going to save us, the association will fight for us. And they just tend to be very careless in what they say. So also focusing on that. And I think our Portuguese Competition Authority has been very strong on these two issues, and it has been proving they are in the right way.
Thank you very much. Not very relevant to our discussion of the topic, but as you mentioned, that dominant position abuses are sometimes harder to prove. We also have this issue because when it's a cartel case, it's mostly evidence-based violation, infringement. We are most heavily based on the evidence, while in dominant position cases, we have to do this whole economic analysis, and this is more analyze-based violation. That's why we are struggling with the dominant position abuse more than with cartels, I believe. Thank you for the question. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, it's more a comment than a question. I think from the Italian perspective, we have a lot to learn from this experience of other jurisdictions doing a lot of advocacy outreach to SMEs. It struck me the example of the modeling agencies. We had the same case in Italy. At the same time, we cooperated actually with I think it was the OFT at the time. But, we didn't do what the CMA did afterwards, reaching out, creative industry to issue this warning. And I'm saying this because sometimes with the enforcement, we then struggle, especially when we are going to set the fines, because these normally small as medium enterprises are single product companies. So when you calculate, the fines according to the standard guidelines, you easily get to the 10% turnover, and it's a big fine. It can affect really the viability of business. In fact, we receive a lot of, then requests for inability to pay as well. So it's a problem that we encounter when we use a bit this harder approach compared to a more, advocacy educational approach first. And also, I think we would be also privileged to, in Italy to engage in more advocacy effort towards SME, because the Italian agencies is also entrusted with the provision about abuse of economic independence, which may be more familiar to SMEs. And we were even able to upgrade this law where in the digital context. So if the abuse is committed by involves a digital platform as the abuser, then there is a presumption that there is an abuse. So it's a rebuttable, of course, presumption. And to facilitate, complaints from normally small, medium enterprises, and you know, we have this provision. There is also a civil version of this provision for, you know, private enforcement, but we have also this public enforcement version of this abuse of economic dependence, which I think is, you know, could be more familiar tool for SMEs also to learn about, you know, broader law on unilateral conduct as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing Italian perspective. To conclude, I'd like to note, and I believe our distinguished speakers will also agree, that competition advocacy can make true difference if it is targeted and if right stakeholders are being engaged in a process. So I believe competition authorities worldwide should work more effectively on working with strategies that they are initiating and be more focused on advocacy strategies than it is today. So thank you very much for participating, and sincerely thank you, our distinguished speakers, for coming and for joining us online. Thank you.
Thank you so much.